Welcome back to Mom and Mind. I'm your host, Dr. Kat. On our episode today, we are going to do a deep dive into what is a perinatal IOP. I'm really happy to have on Roxanne Rosenberg, who is an LCMHC and PMH-C and the co-founder and clinical director of Anchor Perinatal Wellness, the Southeast's only perinatal specific intensive outpatient program. She's digging in. We're talking about what is an IOP, what is a perinatal IOP, and about the questions you might have about what is a higher level of care if individual outpatient therapy, once a week therapy, isn't quite cutting it. That is information for you as somebody who might need that support, and also for therapists to know that perinatal IOP programs exist. Roxanne is a member of the new federal Maternal Mental Health Task Force and has volunteered with Postpartum Support International at the local and national level. She's been supporting pregnant and postpartum people for over 15 years through individual psychotherapy, IOP programs, birth doula work, and advocacy work. She has also provided trainings across the country in perinatal mental health and women's trauma, and Roxanne is a bilingual Latina mom of two and is herself a survivor of perinatal loss and trauma. This is a really important episode, and I'm grateful that Roxanne is coming on to share this information so that everyone can know that there is another level of treatment available for perinatal folks. So let's meet Roxanne. Welcome, Roxanne. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Kat.
Yeah, I'm very happy to have you on to talk about IOP programs and perinatal IOP programs. This is not a topic we've really gotten into in any depth here on the podcast yet, and it's a long time coming. And I know you are doing really, really great work in this area, so I'm happy to hear from you. So yeah, if you can start from the top, I guess, what is an intensive outpatient program and what is a perinatal IOP program?
Absolutely. So, an intensive outpatient program is a level of care in mental health. So just like, traditional weekly therapy is a level of care, just like inpatient treatment is a level of care, IOP or intensive outpatient is a level of care. And it is a level of care that provides more support than traditional outpatient treatment, but doesn't require someone to be outside of their community and home to receive that enhanced support. Typically, IOP involves 3 hours of care 3 days a week. It can be a little less, a little more.
Mm.
In a group setting, so you're in community with other people experiencing mental health conditions, and you're taken care of by a treatment team. Typically, there's going to be several therapists. There might be a medication prescriber. There's going to be a clinical director. It is a facility based care. But again, people are living at home typically,
Mm-hmm.
and they're able to carry on with other aspects of their life while they get 9+ hours of treatment each week. And it's also a temporary level of care. So people typically step up to receive this level of care for 4 to 12 weeks. And then they go back to their traditional outpatient level of care.
Mm-hmm. What are some reasons why somebody would enter into an IOP program? Like, what might they be needing that they need that level of care?
Yeah, so there can be a lot of answers to this question.
Mm-hmm.
Some folks were in an inpatient program and aren't quite ready to go back to once a week counseling. So having something in the middle, a step down program, is really, really helpful in solidifying those skills, in getting that enhanced support before they go back to outpatient. Some folks are stepping up from traditional outpatient. They're noticing that once a week counseling, monthly med management isn't sufficient to address their symptoms, and they're looking for something more. But generally speaking, it's folks with moderate to severe mental health conditions. So in the case, of perinatal folks, that would be anything on the spectrum of perinatal mental health conditions: depression, anxiety, OCD, trauma, mood dysregulation, etc. Um, and in a perinatal IOP, they're getting a specialized curriculum designed for pregnant and postpartum folks. and they are being treated by providers who have special training in perinatal mental health. There's often a childcare component because, of course, that's a major barrier
Right.
for perinatal people seeking care. Um, there's often a family component, right? Because we know that perinatal mental health conditions don't exist in a vacuum.
Right.
It's a systemic issue.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so that's sort of how a perinatal level of IOP differs.
Do you know about how many perinatal IOP programs there are in the US?
I do. So I'm going to give a little history first.
Oh, yes, let's go.
So the very first perinatal day treatment program opened in the year 2000, and that was at the Women and Infants Hospital of Rhode Island. Um, 15 years later, in 2015, we had three more programs
Hmm.
for a whopping total of four.
Mm,
Now, 9 years after that, we have 32.
that's so
Um,
much better.
it is so much better. That's still about one program for every 18,000 people with a perinatal mental health condition.
Mm,
So we're still talking about, a stadium full of people. One of those has access to perinatal mental health, intensive outpatient, or another higher level of care. So it's getting better and it's getting exponentially better, but
hmm.
we're still at the very forefront. So right now, only 17 states, and I'm including DC, which had a program just open in the last 2 months.
Nice.
17 states have a program, and then there are 32 total.
Okay, so right, we've come some distance with still a long way to go.
Yeah.
Um, right. So what I will talk a little bit more specifically in a minute about like the curriculum and how that works for perinatal IOP. But if there's not a perinatal IOP program near somebody, where do they go?
So some programs are able to operate virtually. Usually that's still within the confines of a state.
Right.
Um, but that's helpful. So, for example, the IOP that I work with is in North Carolina, but we're just in Raleigh. And so we can reach, 4 hours to the mountains and 3 hours to the coast because we can provide virtual services, but we can't cross state lines.
Mm-hmm.
So if there isn't a virtual option, we will often work with people to hodgepodge something, So, like, let's identify three groups you can attend. Maybe those are groups on PSI's website. Um, let's get your med manager to see you weekly for a while. Maybe we can step up your individual sessions to 2 or 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same, but it is a way to get some enhanced services without the presence of those higher levels of care.
Okay. Right. So that would still be a perinatal focus, ideally.
Hmm.
Um,
Yes.
what happens if that's not available to have a perinatal focus, kind of outpatient hodgepodge?
There are general IOPs and day programs as well that people can attend, where they will still get some good evidence based skills for general mental health concerns. It's better than nothing. Um, Although we've seen many times where the perinatal program is a lot more effective at addressing the concerns of the perinatal person.
Oh, right, right. It's very tailored, and everyone who's a provider understands what's going on.
Right. So, somebody with moderate to severe symptoms of a perinatal mental health condition is probably experiencing symptoms daily, multiple times a day. Um, Many people have intrusive thoughts or those unwanted, unpleasant thoughts that pop into their mind many times a day. Um, they might feel limited in their ability to function in different roles, like their job or with parenting or in relationship,
Mm.
either with a partner or family or friends. So we're looking for that combination of my symptoms are causing me daily distress. and they're impacting my ability to be the kind of parent, spouse, partner, friend, employee that I want to be.
Hmm.
Um, the cool thing about this time period is that some people will have parental leave. And so that's a really good time to get in a lot of treatment in a short period of time.
Hmm.
Um, so it's sort of another way that this intensive level of care can fit really nicely in the perinatal period.
Um, right. So if somebody is having relatively mild symptoms, they feel, mild to moderate, and they feel contained enough by weekly therapy or even twice a week, and medication is on board somewhere, um, that's fine. But if they,
Yeah.
even if they're feeling like they need more support, is a perinatal IOP something that they can still access, or is it only if they're having like difficulty with functioning?
A perinatal IOP really is for those folks who are having that daily distress and are experiencing some limitations in their function. Um, you know, totally makes sense that somebody with milder symptoms might want to get that, step up of enhanced support. Um, if it becomes a question as to whether they're using insurance or not, really. So,
Mm,
insurance is going to look for medical necessity. You know, we need to see that they're experiencing moderate to severe symptoms. If someone was able to self pay, then they might be able to get that care without meeting medical necessity.
okay, yeah, that there's I assume probably a lot of benefits, and sometimes maybe barriers, with insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can make it complicated. Like, it does, if somebody's insurance even covers it, or those kinds of questions. I mean, that is
Hmm.
that all stuff like within your program that you help people figure out?
Yes, yes. So when someone comes in, we'll ask them if they have any type of insurance, and then we, as a program, will call and find out what their benefits are.
Hmm.
I've never had an insurance plan not cover IOP. It's
Hmm.
sort of um, it's a very well-known level of care in other areas of mental health,
Hmm.
like substance use disorder and eating disorders.
Hmm.
So insurance companies are aware of this level of care, and they often like it because it can prevent hospitalization, which is more costly. So I
Hmm.
would say there is widespread coverage of IOP.
That's great.
Um, However, it is a more expensive level of care because of the dosage, right? You're getting those 10 hours a week. And so deductibles and co-insurances and co-pays can be prohibitive sometimes.
Hmm.
And so programs try to work with people on payment plans, on interest-free financing,
Hmm.
um, but at least it is accessible through most insurance.
Well, that's good to know. And also, I'm thinking, if somebody is at that level of distress, being able to figure out all of these details is hard. I mean, it's hard when you feel fine, because
Yep.
I mean, it's every insurance company and every plan do different things, so
Hmm.
that your program, and it sounds like most IOPs are doing
Yes.
that as part of the service.
Absolutely. We do encourage people to check for themselves as well, because
Hmm.
probably everyone with insurance knows you can get different answers at different times.
Yeah.
So we have three different ways we check, but we're also like, throw on that fourth, give them a call yourself, see what they say, if they feel capable.
Right.
Sometimes we're involving family too, or another support person to
Hmm.
help set up all of this initial piece, right? They've got to get to the IOP, they've got to figure out the financial piece, they may have to figure out childcare. Those are obstacles to getting the care that someone needs when they're having moderate to severe symptoms. And so we sort of marshal the support system, and we also ourselves get involved to help make these decisions easier.
Okay, so for IOP programs, it's you said like 10 hours a week for 4 to 12 weeks. And what are you seeing, in terms of people's improvement, and how it's impacting their well-being?
I mean, it's really exceeded our expectations. So my program has been open for 2 years, and we've been collecting effectiveness data for those 2 years. What we're seeing is that after an average of 6 weeks of treatment, people's depression scores are cut in half
Nice.
and their anxiety scores are cut in half. 51% reductions in both types of scores. And that really matches, what we see and what patients report just, verbally.
Hmm.
So what that looks like is that their scores are going from that, on average, severe range of depression and anxiety to mild in 6 weeks.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What do you think is um well, what do you see rather is part of that process? What is helping?
hmm One of them is the dosage of care, right? So they're getting 10 hours a week, every week of therapy.
Hmm.
So what they could do in 4 weeks in an IOP would take 40 weeks in outpatient therapy, right?
Hmm.
So one is just you're getting a whole lot of that support in a concentrated way. The community aspect, I think, is a huge part of it too.
Hmm.
They are in community with other perinatal people who are experiencing similar things, which is normalizing, which is shame reducing. They
Hmm.
give each other ideas.
Hmm.
And so that's a really beautiful dynamic to see that the people in the program are helping each other in addition to receiving these evidence-based perinatal specific modalities.
Yeah, that's really powerful. That's a fast turnaround. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's it's hard to heal that quickly from like a broken bone.
Yes. And I will say most people are going to need outpatient care after that,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Um, so it's not, I don't want to overstate and say that you do your 6 weeks and you're back to 100%,
Hmm.
but you might be back to 80%,
That's significant.
and yes, yeah.
Yeah, that is really significant. Um, I want to touch on one thing that I hear just in general about people who are on the fence about going to a group or group support
Mhm.
is that they're overwhelmed by their own stuff and they're worried that they're going to be overwhelmed by other people's stuff. How do you manage that in a group setting?
I've heard that as well. And what I would say is this is a structured program. It's not, 10 people getting together and just talking amongst themselves about the challenges that they're facing, right? So, for example, in our program, they're going to have 1 hour of a evidence-based skill that they learn, right? So the provider is teaching them a skill and maybe practicing. They're going to have 1 hour of a perinatal specific topic like maternal or parental guilt, parental identity. So the conversation is tailored around that topic.
Hmm.
And they're going to have 1 hour that's more processy, where they might be talking about how their weekend was, but it's still structured. What were your successes? What were your challenges? What can you try next time? Right?
Hmm.
So there's a very well trained provider who is guiding everyone through these. We also want people to be honest about what they're experiencing, but we don't share details of self harm,
Hmm.
details of intrusive thoughts, because absolutely that can just give someone a new intrusive thought.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so there are some group guidelines that help protect folks. And the other thing is, we're available if someone needs to step out. So probably at least twice a week, someone just steps out and says, "Hey, can I get some one-on-one support?" Um, and we meet them wherever they're at and help them one-on-one, and they get a break from whatever dynamic is happening in the group.
Is that possible both in person and virtually?
Yes. Yes, we always have an extra staff member who is available either in person or virtually, um, both, um, for anyone who needs to step out.
So in creating this program, I mean, this is perinatal specific. It's not the kind of general population. So
Mhm.
the needs are more specific. How do you set up the program for folks?
Mhm. So, and we talked a little bit already about the curriculum, right, which is really specific to the concerns and needs of pregnant and postpartum people. Another way is, what is the environment like? Is it homey? Are there places to feed your infant if you're feeding either with your body or with a bottle? Is are your babies nearby if you need to use childcare? Um, are there different places to sit? Right? We have yoga balls, and in addition to chairs, and people can also lay out on the floor because pelvic pressure or just aches and pains, right?
Yeah.
Um, so the perinatal IOP, the goal is to create an environment that is comforting, um, and meets the needs of perinatal people. We also have lots of snacks and drink options because, particularly when someone is pregnant, postpartum, lactating, they need to be better hydrated and have more calories. So that's sort of how a perinatal program tailors to that population.
Hmm. What do you hear from people's personal experience going through a program like yours about like how important that environmental part is?
We we have a graduation book where people who leave the program can leave information about their experience for future folks, which is really, really beautiful.
Hmm.
Um, and the feedback we get are things like, I've never gotten care this comprehensive and specialized before. You know, this program saved my life. Being able to bring in my baby made it possible for me to even receive treatment.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I can't think of anything specific about the environment. Other than that, we're just very responsive to it. Like
Oh,
we have we're just adapting to different people's situations. So recently we got another nursing pillow because we got feedback that the other one we had wasn't great. So it's also just about being adaptive.
right. Making changes where you can. For your role in the program, what kinds of things are you managing or in charge of? Like, what does it take to run something like this?
Yeah. So I sort of have two hats. I am a co-founder. I helped create the program with two other Latina mom therapists. Um, and then I'm also clinical director, which means I'm overseeing everybody's treatment day to day.
Hmm.
I'm in charge of uh, following their treatment plans, making sure they're getting high quality care, making sure we're getting in contact with their prescribers, their family members, preparing them for discharge. So, from admission through discharge, I'm overseeing and holding the case while the program therapists are doing most of the clinical work.
Hmm. Right. So I mean, there's just multiple levels of making sure things are running smoothly and people are getting the treatment that they need. So there's the clinical direction, there's the therapist, psychiatrist, insurance, people who deal with insurance, the office staff.
Yes,
So right, you're in a way comprehensively taking care of the mental health of the people who are coming in, giving them as much
exactly.
support as possible.
Exactly. And then our other two founders, one is in charge of admission, so that whole front end process.
Mm.
And the other is in charge of operations and billing. So there are three just
Right.
humongous jobs.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, those are all really big jobs.
And they're also amazing clinicians. So they definitely help out with the clinical piece too.
I think that's really important. I mean, I know that there are programs around that um, are fine and are directed by people who are more of administrative types. But my personal experience is whenever there's somebody who also has the clinical knowledge, who's at the kind of top, um, there's just more sensitivity to the needs of patients and more care taken to those details. Is that
Hmm.
part of what you have found in IOPs in general?
Yes, I agree with that. I think for us, we created this program independently from any sort of hospital system or university because we wanted complete control over the quality of clinical care. Not to say that you can't have good quality at those places, but there's just other forces that
Sure.
are driving things.
Hmm.
And for us, it is three very experienced clinicians who created it and are running the program.
Hmm. For people who are looking for a perinatal IOP, or maybe I can even say therapists who are looking to refer to a perinatal
Mhm.
IOP, how do you direct people to determine what would be a good fit?
So, Postpartum Support International has a pretty comprehensive list on their website under intensive treatment in the US, under Get Help. Um, yeah, that probably has the most comprehensive list.
Hmm.
Um, that's where you'll find that list of 32 programs, or actually 31 because Georgetown isn't on there yet.
Hmm.
Um, they can also search for perinatal intensive outpatient program and their state. But on the PSI website, it has them listed by state. So you might not know where in the state they're located, but you'll know that there is one in your state.
Hmm.
Um, that's the best place to start. If you do that, you'll notice that in many areas there are none. And so then you want to look for the closest state to you because many IOPs and day programs will help people secure housing in the state where the program is located
Ooh.
so that they can attend. So we've had folks from 4 or 5 other states come attend our program. They just have to physically relocate. And typically, those folks are coming for about 4 weeks
Hmm.
to receive services if there isn't one in their state.
Wow. Right. So if they can't even attend virtually if they're out of state.
Right,
Hmm.
right.
Yeah, that is tough. So while that's fascinating, your program is able to help people find temporary housing.
Yes. So we've had folks who have come and stayed in like a long-term Airbnb,
Hmm.
in a hotel that we have a contract with, or in with family and friends if they're lucky enough to have somebody that can be anywhere in the state,
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
have to be within the state. I know other programs have been successful in getting Ronald McDonald House and some of these other medical housing charities to help as well. So we're working on that, but we don't have that option quite yet.
Hmm. That's so good to know because, right, I mean, that with all of the other barriers to care that people could have, knowing that that is a possibility can just pave the way,
Hmm.
and that you guys are figuring it out on their behalf as well.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
It's a really big deal. So, especially for, people who are coming out of the state or have to travel far. You mentioned a little while back about, needing to have their baby with them for care and feeding and all of that. Um, and obviously that would be a barrier to care if they can't come in and have their baby with them. And there's all of these other things going on when people are feeling depressed or anxious anyways with care for baby. Some people times, people are having challenges there. How do you support people through that?
Yes, that's a really good question because the perinatal mental health condition doesn't only affect the parent with the condition, it can also affect how that parent feels able to connect with their little one. Um, and so I guess we address that in several ways. One is that we have on site childcare, and many perinatal IOP and day programs do. Our childcare is down the hall. It is led by postpartum doulas, so folks who are highly trained in
Mhm.
infant caregiving, and who are just so happy to provide care so that someone can get mental health care. Um, we also like having babies around because then we can observe the parent baby dyad
Mhm.
and address any concerns the parent has with attachment, with Sometimes they feel like they don't know what to do with their baby, or they're not feeling close to their baby, or they're even having some negative feeling towards their baby. And with having baby around, we can do some dyadic work, where we have parent and baby in the room, and we can observe and help um, help them to move the interaction in a more positive direction.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so I would say having on-site childcare and having that dyadic therapy option are ways that we can help with that.
That's probably pretty central also to the healing, I would imagine. I mean, it would be hard to not include that and have it feel for them, especially people who are having challenges, for it to feel like they can go back home and redo the outpatient care if there's still that like kind of um, question about their connection with their child.
Yeah, their connection, their identity as well, right?
Hmm.
Their feeling of competence in their
Right.
role as mother or parent. Yeah. There are actually some programs in the country where all of treatment is done with the parent and the baby.
Hmm.
Um, all 10 hours. In our program, we focus on the birthing parent, and then we bring in the baby to do select dyadic work when it's appropriate. So
Hmm.
there are different types of perinatal programs, the mother baby dyadic programs, and the ones that focus more on the birthing parent.
Hmm. So with in some ways with so few per capita available, you don't always get to pick in terms of proximity and whatnot. I imagine there have to be states that have more than one program,
Hmm.
but still, it might just be a couple.
Yes. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think the max is three. California might have three, I think, and I think Minnesota does. But yeah, very few.
Right. So how, I mean, clearly more need to be available.
Yes.
The demand is high, right? It's not like
Hmm.
you guys are sitting there twiddling your thumbs with nobody to help. The demand
Right.
is high, right? Do you see that?
Yes. Yes. The other part of that, though, is that it can be an underutilized resource because people don't even know to look for it.
Well,
So that's why I'm so happy we're doing this, because part of the charge that we have is to educate the public that these programs are starting to exist
mm-hmm,
and that they can have access to them.
mm-hmm,
So our program right now is very busy, which I'm happy that we're able to serve other people. But we'll have times that are slow when we know there are so many people in need. So getting the word out is really important.
yeah. So what do you think needs to happen? What's your vision for, these programs being more available?
Okay, I love this question. So, I think my life's goal and the life goal of a lot of my colleagues is for there to be this comprehensive system of care for perinatal people,
Hmm.
where there are multiple levels available in every community,
Hmm.
right? And people can sort of flow seamlessly from one level to the other depending on what they need at a given time.
Hmm.
That would mean having inpatient hospitals specifically for perinatal folks in every state,
Right.
right? There are
Yeah.
three right now.
Yikes.
That would mean having a day program in every state. Day program is also called partial hospitalization, where they're there most of the day and they go home. That would mean having multiple IOPs in every state. Um, and then going lower down on the pyramid, having lots of local support groups,
Hmm.
having lots of certified um, perinatal mental health outpatient therapists, right?
Hmm.
So we're hoping to create what, like I was saying before, exists to some degree in substance use disorder treatment and
Hmm.
eating disorder treatment and adolescent treatment, where there are all of these levels of care depending on what a person needs, um, easily accessible financially and geographically.
Hmm. Right.
That's what we need.
Yeah, that is what we need. So yeah, how would somebody go about starting an IOP program. I imagine it's incredibly involved and lots of
It is.
red tape and things and whatnot. But yeah, what's that process like?
Well, first, I want to say you don't have to do it alone anymore.
Hmm.
So, prior to Anchor Perinatal Wellness coming onto the scene, everyone was sort of operating on islands,
Hmm.
in their state. And so we decided to create a collaborative for perinatal higher levels of care, either those that already exist or those who are hoping to open a program in the near future.
Hmm.
And so we meet monthly, and people come in and ask whatever questions they have about how do I do this, and they can get ongoing support.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So,
That is like a removing a barrier to care also to make it more
yeah,
accessible for people to start these programs. It's huge.
yes. And I do want to call out, we did it, but it wasn't our idea. Bobby Postmentier at Drexel University wrote an article in 2020 saying we really need a collaborative. And we said, okay, we can do that.
Nice. That's great. It takes all
So,
of us, right?
yeah, absolutely. So, that's a resource. In terms of the process, it is a very challenging process. Um, you have to get a license, like it depends, it's state specific, but
Hmm.
most states are going to require a facility license. So you have to be licensed like an inpatient unit. You have to have a mental health facility,
Hmm.
and there are going to be dozens and dozens of requirements at the state level. Then, if you want to be able to take insurance, you have to become accredited.
Oh, right.
So that's a separate process
Hmm.
with, I think, Hartford accreditation is 1,200 standards. Um, some of the bigger pieces involved are going to be preparing your space that meets HARF and state requirements, um, writing your policies and procedures. That's a big one. That's a 200-page document.
Right.
Um, Developing your curriculum. That's a fun part,
Hmm.
but it's also very time intensive. Um, your funding source is
Hmm.
going to be really important. We self funded the development of our program.
Hmm.
Um, Other programs have been able to get grant money, or they're attached to a university or a hospital and are able to get funding that way. Um, and then your staffing, right? Creating your staffing infrastructure.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, you're building something from the ground up. It's a lot of work, but again, there are lots of people willing to help.
Yeah, and I think there are probably people who in lots of places who want to start something like this but don't have, an idea of where to start or feel even overwhelmed by the process. And the fact that you have a collaborative and you're where people are open and willing to exchange ideas and information is goes so far in helping the program to be set up to help the person who needs the help. And
Hmm.
I mean, the what's the word, the domino effect of just this that support that you're creating, I assume, and my hope is going to fast track more programs popping up.
That's what's happening. We're
Okay.
seeing that happen.
Oh, great.
So I've probably talked to 12 different programs in the past 2 years that are trying to get programs up and running.
Hmm.
And of those, at least three of them are now open. So absolutely, there's momentum right now. People are seeing a path forward and it's happening, but we probably need 10 times the number of programs we currently have. So there is a lot of room in this space to keep filling in the gap.
So, for people who are needing this type of care, wanting this, or therapists who want to send their patients to this type of care, how do you go about having that conversation? How do you talk to them about the benefits and all of that?
So I think, I always like to acknowledge off the bat that it is a big commitment. It's a big commitment of time, of sometimes finances, of effort, certainly. Time away from family. So I want to acknowledge that. But I also want to say that doing this for a short period of time can get people's lives back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lot of people that come in and say, I can't possibly spend this time on myself when I'm failing at being a mother, I'm failing at being a spouse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or an employee. And of course, they're not failing. That's part of the illness.
Mm-hmm.
But what I want to say to them is, let me help you get back there. Take
Right.
this time for yourself so that you can get back to being the type of fill in the blank that you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take some time in the short term, but in the long term, you're going to, I can't promise, but you're going to experience a new level of functioning and healing.
Right. So, I mean, those are all understandable thoughts and concerns, like you said, given that the nature of what depression and anxiety and all that due to your thought process. Are you, I guess, bringing in spouses or family members to talk about this as well?
Yes. So we like to have a support person come in at least twice at the beginning of treatment so we can orient them
Oh,
as to what their loved one is going to go through,
mm-hmm,
what it might look like, and what the requirements are.
mm-hmm,
And then at least one at the end as well to talk about discharge, what we're going to be connecting them with so they can be successful in traditional outpatient.
mm-hmm.
And then for anybody who wants it, we also do family therapy along the way.
Thanks.
Um, it might usually it's addressing the normal stuff that couples and families go through. Um, you know, everyone's sleep deprived, everyone's feeling a little resentful.
Mm-hmm.
They might have some communication issues, but when those are present in the context of a perinatal mental health condition, they maybe become more important to work on.
Mm-hmm.
So we're able to help them with that.
That's fantastic. Right. So the person who's struggling, as you were saying before, might already be having a hard enough time talking about what's going on for them, how they're doing, let alone explain to a family member or themselves why they could be supported by this level of care. Just becomes so much harder if you have to also, if you are the person who's suffering and you also have to be a translator um,
Yeah.
to everybody else. It makes sense, so much sense that this takes a comprehensive approach and is involving family.
Hmm.
So I guess I have two questions. One for people who are interested in your program, how do they find you? And secondly, for providers who are interested in starting a program, how do they contact you?
Yeah. So any help seeker or provider who has maybe an interested client, they can go to our website at anchorperinatal.com. They can email us at info@anchorperinatal.com. They can call us at 919-275-0806. They can send a pigeon carrier. I mean, we want
Anyway.
people to get to us however they can, and then we'll help them with next step.
Mhm.
Um, for anyone who's interested in opening up a higher level of care in perinatal mental health, you are welcome to join our collaborative, which meets on the first Wednesdays of the month at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you want to get plugged into that, again, you can email at info@anchorperinatal.com. Anyone's also welcome to email me directly at Rosenberg@anchorperinatal.com. And that is on the website as well if you need the spelling.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing all of this, for doing the work that you're doing. It's so incredibly important, both the program that you have, but also the capacity building that you're supporting and providing other people to do. There's no way that it's not changing the landscape here. It just is.
Thank you. Thank you. I just love to be part of this community filling the gap.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time and your work.
Of course. Thanks, Kat.
So as you heard, you can go to anchorperinatal.com to learn more and email info@anchorperinatal.com. Please spread the word that perinatal IOPs exist and they are available to help people who need a higher level of care. And if you aren't yet subscribed or following Mom and Mind podcast on your favorite podcast platform, do that so that you can get every single episode downloaded directly to you. And you can follow along on Instagram at Mom and Mind. Thank you so much for being with us. Until next time.